See? Done. Works very well. I'm carrying 1 packet of 7 and then 7 loose ones. I figured for the quick reloads that's easier to do instead of having to open a packet each time. Well, a channel I'm subscribed to, this Pine Tar Robin Homestead, wondering about a tree that he has, which is one of these. Now, we always call them popples, and there's a reason for that, but they're actually a quaking aspen. And like, here's one that fell, and I can show you what the leaves look like. See, they're, well, I don't know if it's going to show, slight serrations, but rounded with only a small little peak on them. And now in fall, these will be a really gold, yellow gold kind of color. And they hang on for a long time. And then when the wind blows, you can hear them just rattling and rustling. You know, they're kind of interesting tree. But, you know, it's not the most impressive wood. But I'll show you up on the trunk. Well, they can get pretty big. You know, a lot of times you'll see them about 18 inches. Depends on how crowded they are. But this is an older one that should probably come down because she's probably going to fall like this other one did. Middle of the night, just a big crack, and down she went. But the wood is not particularly, it's light as a feather. And it's really stringy. You know, it's quite a grain on it. The one thing, you know, using this stuff for firewood, it splits like a dream. And it burns well, you know, it just don't burn for a long time. But it's one of the pleasantest woods to burn. And I'm going to get this one out here, but I got to kind of work a trail out. That's why this survives, because it was in a hard spot to get at. But I've got a lot of those coming up, but you can see all this broken down tangle. That's from them, but they're gradually being taken over by these oaks. And ironwood, there's ironwood along here too. And ash down at the bottom. But a lot of these, well, like there's a little one right there, it's dead. They get crowded for light. They only get so big and then they just die and fall down and make a tangle. But this one is kind of gnarly, twisted up sort of thing. But there's, you know, a lot of wood in it. But I was looking at a different one. And I'll move the tripod. Okay, right there, there's one that's got a branch broke off, and I know it's dead up on top. So that whole bottom part is going to go bad. Well, I got about 25 feet of real nice straight stuff there. So when I figure out how I can get the tractor back in here, I'll have to take that one out of here and see if I can't make some boards or do something with it. You know, I think it's like weight-wise about like what basswood is, but it's a grainier wood. You know, it's soft, but it's grainy. But it's got a great smell to it. Both the wood and the smoke when you burn it. You can always tell when somebody's burning that. But I've got quite a few of them in each of these little draws. They moved in. But eventually they will get crowded out by the other trees. So you can see here how grainy that wood is. And it doesn't take if you try to flex it, it cracks real quick. So I don't know, I'm curious to see what boards would be like. I know it cuts real easy. But like I said, we call it popple here, but it's really a quaking aspen. The reason we call it popple, like the way we spell it is Popple, but it's really, the name came from the Scandinavian loggers. Like in Swedish, aspen is called popple, but it's called Popple. You know, it's just a slightly different spelling for the same tree, but you know, these trees, the reason they're called that here is because of the Scandinavian loggers that were in Minnesota. You know, they see one of these, they call it a popple. They don't call it an aspen. I'm going to have to get that big tree down. You know, like I say, it's if you get up real high, that branch broke off and it's dead all the way around. But I think this is good and solid here. And the one behind it there is the same way. It's not as big, but there's a good straight trunk and then it's dead at the top. And I can see the woodpeckers have been burrowing it. But there's a lot of little ones coming up. Probably from the suckers. So I was always going to cut a trail down through here anyway, so I can get the tractor in there, but I'll have to keep that in mind. They aren't bad if they're still standing. Once they hit the ground, you're screwed. They rot very quickly. Well, for years I couldn't figure this out. On this side of the fence, it's all oak and ash. And some basswood and stuff, but if you just cross the fence line, all of a sudden you run into all those popples. You just stick with them in there. Though there is some ash and some oak, the majority of that whole bank there, that whole strip of woods, is popple. And, you know, this puzzled me. I mean, why does it turn off like a switch? You know, because like I say, on that side of the fence, 90% popple. You get over here, no popple. Just cross the fence. And I could never figure that out. Well, turns out, I talked to one of my uncles later. You know, this was like 20 years ago, and he clued me in on this. He said that there used to be popple in here, but that was my grandfather's favorite wood. You know, it's for burning in a cook stove because it's easy to light, burns quick, burns hot. You can't leave it sit around. You know, it's got to be handled right. But they used to come up here and log that popple out of here and haul it out to the farm, which is like 10 miles out in the valley. But that was where he got his firewood. But he cut popple. You know, and there isn't very much popple in our pasture. Right around my place I have some. But you get out in the pasture, any open spot where he could get in there, he cut them out. But they're coming back in certain areas. But they're kind of what they consider a nursery tree. They grow fast, and they grow from the seedlings, you know, or from seeds, but also from runners off of the main tree. So they'll take over an area, but then eventually the ash and oak will start in and they'll die out. But they're a horrible thing to have. What happens is they die very quickly. They don't live long, and they fall down. And they just make a mess. You know, like if you try to track a deer through them, like right here is a main deer trail. But if you follow that thing has to snake around all over to get between all them deadfalls. The good thing is they don't last long, 2-3 years, they just rot away. But it's a steady thing, they're falling all the time. That's tough walking through there. But you can even just see it just looking, you know, no brush on this side, nothing but brush on that side. But eventually, I see a lot of oak and some ash, and there's even a hackberry there. they'll take over and kind of die them popples out, or the popples will end up moving down in, they'll stay only in the really swampy areas where it's too wet for the oak, though the ash will grow in about the same area. But the problem with them is they grow fast, they don't get much of a root system, and if it's windy, they tend to hold their leaves late in fall, so they catch a lot of wind and they'll tip over, just pull the whole root ball over. So there are places, it's a bugger to get through. But that's like I said, these deer, they find a trail, but it's a zigzaggy trail.